Welcome to the GuestX podcast, where my co-host Brian Amaui and I uncover the latest technologies and human-driven initiatives that are raising customer expectations and forever changing how we define customer experience across a host of industries. If you are passionate about creating incredible content and unique experiences, join us as we talk to leading product and experience experts across the globe and learn about how today's most successful brands are setting themselves apart from the competition. Good afternoon, Mr. Guest Experience, Mr. Brian Amaui. How are you doing, bud? Are you on mute? We're not even gonna cut that from our pod. I will instruct the team that they are not to cut that from the podcast because you were just on mute. Yeah, that's excellent. Good start. Good start.
Background noise while you're doing your amazing introduction that you do every week.
Did you roll out of bed? I mean, is that what the self-employed 1%ers do? You just kind of rolled out of bed probably and you're ready here for
4 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't have hours. I'm property managing and doing stuff, you know.
You doing good though? Everything's good in Orlando? We were exchanging some messages. You said the market's slowing down a little bit over there.
Yeah, it's been interesting watching the market, how people are reacting to it. Obviously, economy, and then time of year. We typically in the Orlando market right now are really, really busy, and our houses are busy. Just straightforward, we're just seeing a very big slowdown in future rentals.
I wonder if some of that's got to do with these fuel prices we're seeing. I mean, this is, when I was over there earlier this year in England, I think I paid $1,500 to fly home. And this isn't, Matt Loney lay flat bed. No, this was,
we know that
back,
come on.
Okay. Back of the plane sitting, we got investors who listen, right? But no, sitting, by the toilet, $1,500 a ticket, but that's gotta impact a little bit of what you're seeing.
Well, I think it's a mixture between that. There was a study that was done as well, and they found that a lot of people overextended themselves over COVID. So they were like, yep, we're working from home. Let's travel and stay in beautiful places all over the world.
A lot of cheap money
outside of the house. And now all of a sudden you've got home expenses for 2 places, bunch of kids you've got to entertain. So dinner's out and all of this kind of stuff. COVID stops and now life continues. Cash is gone.
Yeah. Well,
so I think that has I think it has an impact. I'm also not entirely sure that the international market's opened up entirely.
Well, I do think it's going to, it ties in perfectly with our guest today. I'd like you to introduce him because I think it's a subject we have not talked a lot about, but it is certainly what I would say it has become the number one subject over the last 2 years of homeowner acquisition. And whether you're trying to grow or just get better homes, better inventory, you're always, for those of you who are new to this industry and some of our listeners, that's something, it never stops, right? You should be always trying to get inventory. And that doesn't mean you're always growing, but better inventory means better margins and things like that. But it really has been, as the amount of inventory kind of got tight, we've had a little more inventory, I think, on the market. And I think our guest today will be able to speak to that. But this is a subject that is really important and I think ties in really closely with the guest experience.
I think you're absolutely right. So today we are speaking with Brooke Pfautz. Brooke had been in the industry for over 13 years when he founded Vantage Resort Realty in Ocean City, Maryland, and took the idea from a napkin to 500 properties in just 5 years with a very successful exit. After working and consulting with some of the top vacation rental professionals, he founded Vintory. It is the only outsourced business development agency in the space dedicated entirely to helping professional property managers add new homes to their portfolios. Brooke, welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? Happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here. Brooke's actually a pretty good friend in the industry. So we've known each other and done some work together. I'm excited to talk to him today because, you've got some unique insights not a lot of people have, not only from a perspective of a property manager, but now on the technology side and on the growth side. So for those guests that don't know you, Brooke, give us like a 30-second rundown, who you are, what you do, what you're up to now, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, happy to do it. We'll get excited to be here. So thanks for having me. But so my background, I actually started in mortgage banking, and then like everybody somehow stumbled into short-term vacation rentals. So I started Vantage Resort Realty back in 2007. as you said so eloquently earlier, grew that company pretty fast, grew it to about 500 properties under management, sold it in 2013, and it just had some various other leadership roles within the short-term vacation rental industry. But what I realized over that period was the biggest pain point that every single vacation rental manager had. It didn't matter if they had 5 properties or 5,000 properties, is they wanted to grow. They wanted to, get more inventory. And like you said earlier, Matt, even if you want to stay stagnant, you still need to constantly grow because you're always churning a certain percentage of your inventory any given year. So I realized that this was a big pain point. I realized that it was something that I really enjoyed with inventory acquisition, and it was something I was blessed to be pretty good at. So I figured nobody else was out there doing it. I figured let's do it. So I actually called back in 2019, March of 2019, I called like 4 of my buddies that own vacation rental management companies. And I said, hey, I've got this idea. I'm going to start it's kind of like one part marketing agency, one part software platform that helps short-term vacation rental managers grow their inventory. I went through the whole pitch, and every one of them, like halfway through my pitch, said, Brooke, shut up, I'm in. So I went to my wife and I said, sorry, honey, I'm starting another business. And she kind of rolled her eyes, and we've been off to the races for about 3.5 years now. So fast forward today, Vintory, we've got about 60 employees all over the world. We're 100% remote. I think we're up to over 300, just about 350 partners on our platform. These are, obviously short-term vacation rental management companies. And like I said, we have literally startups with 0 properties, and we have companies with 3,000, plus properties on our platform, and we really help them grow. And I'm sure we'll kind of dig into later how we do that.
So when a company comes to you, what's the first thing people need to be thinking about when they're looking at owner or unit acquisition? For me, when we restarted our property management company, it was all about the type of inventory that we were looking for. Is there a beginning where people really need to start thinking about how they want to acquire units?
Yeah, 100%. So that's what they do when we start with them in our onboarding team. The first thing we do is really, bring in one of our senior strategic advisors, and really it's setting the playbook, setting the strategy on what they want. How many properties do they want? What's their end goal? Is their goal to, build this to a certain point, a certain number of properties and sell it? Or is it to build out a company that's a nice sustainable legacy that they can pass off to their kids, or build out, a business where it's like mailbox money? So really understanding, what are you trying to build? What is the type of inventory you want to go after? Do you want to be, only focused on super, super high end luxury? Do you want to, focus on kind of mid range? There's a great company down in Outer Banks. I love their business model. They focus only on condos because there's obviously, everyone knows Outer Banks. You have these huge 16, 18, 20 bedroom homes. And this company said, you know what? Riches and niches. We're going to focus on just condos. And they've cleaned it up in that market for those properties. So understanding what your market segment is and what you're going after and what your goals are is really where it all starts.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, from my perspective, it affects guest experience entirely. If you know the type of units that you're going to go after, that means that you also understand your marketing behind it. So you guys take the property manager, you sit them down, you figure out what their strategy is, which in a lot of cases, most property managers don't understand what their KPI is. They just go to town on, I just want to own a bunch of units and want to have a bunch of property managers. And then it just falls sometimes flat on its face, which means that your owner acquisition gets hurt, right? So how does that in turn really, I mean, when you start to think about growth, how do you guys help the property managers scale, going from 1 unit to 5 units to 10 units, and then helping them figure out at what level they need to stop, rethink, and start thinking about growth again?
Well, there's a ton to unpack there. So the first thing we do is really, again, understanding what their strategy is and where their goals are. And then once we do that, we kind of get a good understanding of the market. So one of the first steps after we kind of build out their strategy and their goals is to really understand, like, what is their TAM, their total addressable market, and not only just their TAM, the overall market TAM, but the TAM of the properties they're going after. So if they're in a little tiny market, they say, we only want to take on luxury properties that are 6 bedrooms and greater, and there's only about a dozen of them. And in there, you know what I mean? You've got a pretty small market. So it's really understanding what that looks like. But one of the first things we'll do is really get down and dig down into the data, There's tons of different ways you can get data. You can get it through, tax records and MLS. That's usually the first place because it's free. But a lot of times it's a pain because you can only download like one record at a time. So what we recommend a lot of times is just go to a list broker. There's a million different list brokers out there. There's Info USA, there's Exact Data, there's Melissa Data. There's tons of them. But when you just a key point on the list brokers is make sure that you are looking for absentee owners. This is where the mailing address and the property address are different, which is usually a good indicator of a real estate investor. And then what you can do though is this is where you can really get sophisticated. You can start scraping some data. So you can scrape, your competitors. You can scrape the large OTAs. You can scrape large venture-backed conglomerates that that have maybe purchased some of your competitors. But you can scrape that data, those properties, and then you can kind of target those if you want. Now, obviously, in certain states, you're not allowed to solicit the listings of other brokers. So make sure, obviously, you're following all the real estate laws and things like that in your market. And then the one that is often overlooked is vacation rental permit data. So if your city, county, or township requires a vacation rental permit, guess what? There's a list out there for you. So I would recommend getting that list. Now you might have to buy some brownies and take them to the local courthouse and give little old lady, she was about 75 years old and smoked 2 packs a day. You might have to give her some brownies to get that list, but you can get them. And if they do push back, mention Freedom of Information Act, and you can get that list. But it's so starting with data is really where it all starts in that process.
That's interesting. One of the things that comes up, right, is what is the impact that some of the regulations have been having on homeowner acquisition? I think of, let's use Colorado, for example, where they're starting to limit the number of vacation rental permits that they're going to issue. I guess in those markets, you're just having to really, the only way to grow is to kind of is to take from the competitors. I mean, how much does rate in the, as far as the management fee, how much is that playing in as you're looking at the strategy for acquiring homeowners? What are you seeing on the homeowner front on that side? Obviously, you've got them that run the gamut, right? That it's all about full service and they're willing to pay for it all the way down to they need every dime out of this, to make the mortgage. But I would say, generally speaking, do we run the risk of commoditizing a little bit that service, and where do you see that going?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, the first thing you said is a lot of these markets are, going through some serious regulation and it's limiting them. San Diego is the same thing. They're talking about reducing almost their TAM, their vacation rental permits by half. So
Wow.
think about that. You just have, your market just shrunk by
Yeah.
50%. So it's getting super, super competitive, which means you need to be even more strategic in your owner acquisition. And you also got to make sure you have the right properties and you're running a good business. But I've never been a big fan. Look, operating on price and competing on price is very, very challenging. If you're going to do it, you better be the Amazon, you better be the Walmart, you better be so thin margins and
Efficiencies.
and all the way around. And it doesn't mean you can't do it, but if you just literally raise rates or lower rates just to kind of get market share, like it's a race to the bottom. You have to differentiate. What is your program? What's different about your program than everybody else? You have to differentiate. And when you start competing on price, everybody loses, in my opinion, unless you are the Amazon or the Walmart of short-term vacation rental industry. And very, very few people can do it that well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that then happen on a service level, distribution level? Like for small property managers to start to compete with some of the larger brands, and we have this discussion often, but it's a really interesting point because, we all distribute for the most part the exact same way. We're looking at the big OTAs, your Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo. Those are your top 3. And then maybe in other markets, you've got other sources of distribution. And if you're brave enough, you're going to try to do as much direct booking as you possibly can. But we all know as a startup, especially as a startup, trying to develop a site and get to market and be front and center is very difficult. So when you're talking about owner acquisition, you've got to have the right value propositions in play. And to me, that comes down to service, but there's only so many ways you can juggle and make service look good. How do you guys position that? What is your recommendation there?
One of the things we do in the beginning too, and we do onboarding is we have our 7 key messaging building blocks, and it's really understanding and it's building out. I'll go through them real quick, but it's features and benefits, social proof, trust icons. What's your USP, your unique selling proposition? What is your compelling offer? What are your risk reversals? And what is your call to action? And I do have a template if anybody wants it. If they just email me, brooke@vintory.com, I'm happy to send that to them. Where you can build that out. But that's one of the first things we do is really building out that key messaging building blocks. And it can be like, from your features and benefits, just starting there. It can be anything. It can be, and try to like think differently. Like, it could be that, are you running trust-based accounting and in your city or your state doesn't require it? Highlight the heck out of that. I mean, and talk about why it's important. Very, very few people do I ever see any owners or vacation rental management companies highlight to their owners that they're running trust-based accounting. They don't highlight it.
We actually do that.
There you go. There you go.
We did. It was part of our strategy.
you don't
right?
have to.
It's not easy. And if you call it trust accounting, you actually have to do trust accounting. So the other piece of that is finding the software to be able to run the trust accounting. It's not just saying you do it.
Yeah. And, like, hey, like, do you have, are you doing dynamic pricing or revenue management? And yes, maybe all your competitors doing it too, but if nobody's highlighting it, then highlight the heck out of it to show that you are, doing that. So when I started Vantage, way back when in 2007, I said, look, I want to differentiate. How do I differentiate my company than everybody else? Because guess what? There's 20 some different companies up and down this strip of sand. I've got to do it unique. I got to do it differently. So what I did is I thought of it. All right. And again, I think it was actually good that I came from outside the industry and I was doing it a little bit differently. So, this, you guys will laugh at this, but nobody was offering linens, believe it or not. Literally, you had to bring your own sheets and towels when you came here. So not only did we do linens on all of our rentals, but we actually made the bed. So, I mean, this is not.
Hey, by the way, in New Jersey, I still think you bring your own linens. So there are you weren't the last state to convert, but it's amazing.
They had third-party services you could rent sheets and towels from, and literally they gave them to you in a black trash bag. It's like, here you go. Like, welcome to Ocean City.
Lovely. Welcome to Ocean City.
Here's your trash bag of linens, So, but anyways, so we did that. So again, this is like table stakes at this point, but back then that was like, man, Brooke, you guys, this isn't the way it's done in Ocean City. I'm like, that's exactly what I want to hear. So, but then we did other things like, I looked at it. This was so eye opening for me. They built a brand new Hilton right on the ocean, right in Ocean City there. And these 1-bedroom suites at the time were going for $3,200 a week. Now, the 1-bedroom equivalent condo was going for like $1,500 or $1,600 a week. I'm like, why is this Hilton getting 2X? It's virtually the same room. You know what I mean? It's the same view and everything else. So I said, look, what can we do that kind of makes it more similar to that Hilton experience? So I said, all right, well, let's start with a gym. If the building doesn't have a gym, we partnered with Gold's Gym, and every single guest got a free gym membership while they were staying with us. And the beauty was we had all these passes and we only had to pay if they actually used it. And guess what? Like 98% of the people didn't even use the damn thing. So, but it was a differentiator, right? Second thing we did was we actually delivered a USA Today. I hired this like 18-year-old college kid to drive on his bike and literally deliver a USA Today on every single doorstep of every one of our condo, one of our rentals. Now that was the logistics of that, going up and down Ocean City on every single day is challenging. So, but it was a differentiator. And then we did another thing called Sunny Days Guaranteed. So I actually found a weather insurance. And what we did is if your vacation was a rain out, and what happened was rain out was defined as over an inch of rain in a given day, at least 4 out of the 7 days of your week vacation, we would actually give you a full refund of your reservation. I think I had to pay like $5, $6 a reservation to get that insurance. Never paid out once. And then I think they actually they closed that insurance product or something like that. So we actually ended up self-funding it. And then I think we changed it to like a $500 credit on a future reservation or something like that. But again, we wanted to differentiate, and we did a whole series of different things like this. And the whole thing was we did this to position it for the guest. Like, can we differentiate and not create a commodity, where these properties are commodities? How can we differentiate? But what ended up happening is the owners absolutely loved it. The owners were like, you know what? Like, because they do all these things, I bet it's bringing in a higher class of guests. I bet it's bringing in, they're able to get a higher ADR, higher nightly rent, weekly rentals. And it worked. So again, unintended consequences. The unintended consequences for us was we did it for guests, but it actually ended up helping us out on the acquisition strategy.
It's really interesting. Brian, we talk, and I tell property managers all the time, when people talk about, yeah, I can't charge any more for my rental. And I always say, if you're good at what you do for what you're paying right now, or for what you're doing right now, you can't. But then that means you got to provide more service, right? If you want to get outside the four walls, like the newspaper and the gym memberships, and thinking about why people are choosing different product types, you get outside the four walls, it's no different than a hot tub in Breckenridge or a six-seater golf cart in Destin, Florida. If it's got a value to the guest, they are willing to pay more. And I don't care where the economy's headed. I think actually, your value prop matters more in times in when the economy's worse. It's not that people aren't willing to spend more money, or they're not willing to spend more money. I think they're just making sure you get a little bit more sensitive around, am I getting the value for each dollar that I'm spending than you do maybe when the economy's great, but you still spend the money.
Hmm.
It's just fascinating. One of the things around guest experience, Brooke, we talked about just as we were jumping on was, you mentioned the impact that increasing or improving your guest experience had on your homeowner acquisition. And I got to think too, getting the right homeowners, identifying the right homeowners, whether that be the property they own, which is really important, but also just kind of that mindset of the homeowner can help you deliver a better guest experience, because unlike other lodging verticals, we are somewhat at the mercy of homeowners in what they're willing to reinvest into this asset that they've charged the property manager with marketing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's we had the luxury of having obviously a lot of condo buildings where you could compare properties like, side by side, and you could show, and we had like 10 properties in the same building. You could kind of show, hey, look how this one performed versus how yours performed.
Mm.
And, you could say, you show them the pictures, and literally, it maybe do 25% more in rental income. And they're like, well, why? And then we show them flat out, well, look how theirs is decorated. And, oh, by the way, you could make these upgrades for probably less than $5,000, $10,000. Upgrade your comforters, get a fresh coat of paint on there, get rid of grandma's attic couches. You know what I mean? And you could make a significant difference. I mean, so my business partner Advantage, he owned a lot of inventory himself, and he invested into the properties. And we would show these properties, and these properties would do significantly better. And we would get accused of like cherry picking all the guests and pushing them to his property. And we said, you know what? We're going to book his property last. You know what I mean? We're going to price it so high and intentionally, but it's because he put the money into it. And we actually even offered at one point, and I think there was a couple of years where we did interest-free loans to our owners to actually make the improvements to the properties to be able to do it. Because from our perspective, it was going to make a better guest experience. It was going to get us a higher nightly rate, therefore a higher commission for us. And for our perspective, it was almost like a secured loan, because what we did is we just took it out of future reservations. So we would kind of give them the recommendations. We would lend them the money. We would fix it up, and then we'd say, look, you don't even have to pay us. We're just going to take it out, of your future reservations as it comes out. So it was truly win-win-win all the way around. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of it, just like you talked about, like adding hot tubs. You know what I mean? Hot tubs pay for themselves almost in year one,
Right.
in the most, kind of mountain markets.
I think it's really interesting, especially on the improvement side. I think one of the things previously, Brooke, reviews, 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 reviews. And one of the things that I'm finding with a lot of the homeowners is, which didn't exist in the past. I mean, my first property management company, reviews weren't a thing. It just didn't exist, right? These platforms didn't know what to do with it. They weren't really displayed. Homeowners weren't tech savvy enough to pay attention. And now it seems like everybody's just come up out of nowhere. They know the entire space. Homeowners do, guests know, and reviews have probably become the most important thing. Because from a homeowner perspective, if they start reading the house is dirty, this is broken, that's broken, I couldn't get into the house, all of a sudden start second guessing the property manager that they're with. Is that something that you guys are paying attention to, especially with homeowner acquisition, is on the review side?
Well, it's funny you bring that up. I was going to spin it a little bit differently, I was going to bring this up earlier. We could make these recommendations to a lot of the owners and they wouldn't make the improvements. But when we started, when reviews started coming out and they started getting posted online, and we would actually compile these and we would send them to them, then immediately they would actually start making those changes. So we actually leveraged reviews to help us in kind of our quest for getting these homeowners to make these improvements. So I think it was actually a natural benefit
I, I agree. I mean, you're making my wheels spin. I'm like, how do I start to implement improvements and into my homeowner acquisition marketing campaign? Because it's such a great tool. There's so many homeowners. First, they'll keep the properties up to date to your current inventories, constantly being improved on. And then for new homeowner acquisition, I'll invest in your property, but you've got to put something into it. You need to agree.
Well, and it's a little bit, right, of a spin wheel in that if you get good reviews, and you can drive return guests, I think return guests are more likely to leave good reviews. They they've been there, you've set their expectations. As long as you're continuing to meet that service level and of which you originally got them at, they're going to, and then each year they put in good reviews and that helps you. In the restaurant industry, we used to call it circling the drain, right? When you'd see a restaurant that is struggling, so then they start spending less on marketing dollars and less on labor, and the guest experience goes down, and then now they have less money, so then they do it even more so, and you just can't cut to success, and you've got to spend this money. But I do love that, Brooke, you those are a lot of really creative ways to really align the homeowners with the property manager and go, look, we're in this, we're willing to make this investment with you because we're here, we live it every day. I think that's fascinating. So, Brooke, tell us, I mean, where is, the industry today as far as homeowner acquisition? Where does the market stand? We talked a little bit about regulations, but where is it? And, where do you see it going now as far as the economy? I do hear a lot of concerns when I talk to clients about the real estate prices they're being paid today. What impact do you think that's going to have on the industry? Nobody's closer to it than you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought this up, and we didn't even talk about this. So thank you for
Yeah.
literally this up perfectly for me. So I just wrote an article for Focus Wire, and it talked about how actually during recessionary periods is actually a boom for supply, short-term vacation rental supply. And there's a couple of reasons why. The first is you think about it, all these people have bought these second homes over the last 3 years. The federal government has pumped trillions of dollars into the system. We've had historically really, really low interest rates, but a lot of this inventory that was coming in actually wasn't going to be used for vacation rentals. It was literally just somebody's second home, and they had no intentions of ever renting it out. But when you head into a recession, what ends up happening is these people, they're going to have to start renting it out. They need to either generate some revenue or they need to sell it. So I actually saw this firsthand, so I had the luxury of actually, launching Vantage in 2007, 2008, the worst recession our
Yeah.
generation has ever seen. It was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. So we launched in 2007, 2008, and we were picking up inventory. 25% of the inventory we were picking up was from a persona that we called First Time Frank. First Time Frank it is exactly what you think it is. It was somebody that never rented before. They had no intentions of renting, but something happened where they were forced to have to actually start renting it out. Guess what? I was First Time Frank. I was in mortgage banking. I had this house in Bethany Beach, Delaware. We had no intentions of renting it out. If I would have told my wife we were going to rent it out, she would have strangled me. She's like, no way somebody's sleeping in my bed, and using my kitchen and things like that. But guess what? We had to. We were forced to. So we're going to see a ton of inventory come out here in the future. History repeats itself. We are definitely, if we're not in a recession right now, we're going to be in one very soon, I predict. And I think you're going to see a lot of people that are forced to do it. In fact, HomeAway, back then when it was called HomeAway, they did a study with some research company. They found that 49% of the inventory that HomeAway had on its platform back, I think in 2008, 2009, was from exactly that same persona. That they said they had no intentions of letting anybody other than friends and family use it, but it was actually listed. Almost half of the inventory on Verbo, HomeAway, was actually from that persona. So we're going to see that same thing happening here. And I think what else is going to happen is there's tons and tons of private equity sitting on the sidelines, waiting to pounce, waiting for the prices to come down. This is nothing new. Private equity and hedge funds and REITs and things like that, like buying, rentals is not a new thing. They've just been doing it historically in long-term property management in the billions and billions of dollars. But what they're realizing now is the yields are much better and the returns are much better in short-term vacation rentals. So they are just waiting for the prices to come down. So I think you're going to see a lot of, and we're already seeing it right now in some of these hedge funds and some of these REITs going out there and picking up some inventory, but they're waiting for it to come down and you're going to see it. And what they're going to do though, is these homes, these people that are forced to sell, these private equity and hedge funds are going to end up buying, and it's going to get into the rental supply because again, they need to get that yield there.
You just answered my question. But it does change your owner's your strategy, right? I mean, that's a completely different type of person that you need to market to. I mean, we have the Orlando market. You know this market really well. Mostly Kissimmee, Davenport areas, all vacation rentals, 40,000 strong and building about 10,000 a year. But we are seeing significant change in the type of buyers here, mostly investor buyers. And so the strategy here changes significantly because it's not a person that is attached emotionally to that home. It also becomes more difficult to reach those people.
Well, I mean, I think you all know CJ Stam with Southern Comfort Cabin Rentals
Yeah.
up in Blue Ridge. He's got a great business, but what I love what he's doing,
He owns that market.
he
Yeah.
crushes it, but he's getting into the development side of it. So he's doing purpose-built vacation homes. So he's got a fund, and I'm not saying anything that he hasn't publicly said. He's got a fund that is out there investing in purchasing land and purchasing these and building these vacation homes. And then think about how great it is from his perspective. He gets to design the best product on the planet, not only for the guest, but also for the asset holder, and the returns. And then he has it not just like you said, Brian, he is a non-emotional owner. They're not going to complain about scratching, their, grandma's antique, table or whatever it happens to be, so they're about the returns. They have property improvement built into the performance, so they know that they can upgrade the furniture every 2 to 3 years. Like it just, to me, that is the future of vacation rentals, where you're going to see more institutional money coming into it, designing the right product. Think about it. It would almost be like, most vacation rentals were not used. They were not designed to be a short-term vacation rental. They were designed to be
Single family home.
second home or
Yep.
somebody's primary home. Right?
Yep.
You have these huge walk-in closets. You have these huge master bedrooms. Why do you need that? You don't need that. Now, in certain markets like Orlando and Gatlinburg and Outer Banks and things like that, they're actually, ahead of the curve here, and they're designing it more for purpose. But in 98% of the markets outside of there, they haven't. So you're shoehorning an existing inventory and making it into a vacation rental wasn't designed to optimize the guest experience, and it wasn't designed to optimize the return for the asset holder. And not only that, but it's also the maintenance and ongoing repairs of that property too. So I think we're going to get more and more into that. You're going to see more and more purpose-built vacation homes and more purpose-built vacation rental communities coming out and sprouting out that are owned by an institutional and one asset holder, as opposed to, having 30 different, owners. Imagine if you think about that for a second. Imagine if you had a hotel and Mr. Marriott, he's got 30 different owners in every one of his units, in every one of his hotel rooms. And, some of them were to standard, some of them aren't. What a pain in the butt that would be to manage that property and manage the guest expectations.
Well, there would be no Marriott because they couldn't satisfy the guest. And I think you're absolutely right. I've been saying it for quite a while, which is at some point, somebody's going to come in and not just build those units, but own the units. And as soon as somebody can come in, own, build, purpose-built units, you can control the entire guest experience.
Yep.
ROIs are going to go up. You don't have additional management fees. There's so many incidental fees that just disappear, right? And then you really become a brand.
And you, again, give a better guest experience, better owners. It's better all the way around. Yeah. And CJ's getting there. I mean, I think he's got about a dozen homes in that one community, and he's going to continue to do it again and again and again. So it's really exciting to see him do that. And I hope more and more companies do that. It's a great product.
It's fascinating. It's an area where there's a lot of innovation, which is really cool and exciting, I think. And it's been around for a while. I mean, the apart hotels, some of the things, and some of it was being done pre-COVID and really took a hit, and a couple of them went under, and we've seen some struggle here recently. But the innovation's not stopping there. It's what venture money does is they keep poking and prodding, and they're looking for, that untapped, or that area where they can, can realize really big gains. And they're going to lose sometimes, but I think with some of these, they're going to hit some home runs. And I agree with you, Brian. It eliminates a lot of the headaches if you can control, if you're completely vertically integrated, where you control it all the way down to the home, to the management company, to how you're acquiring the guests and everything else. Brooke, as we wrap up, for our listeners who want to get in touch with you, who want to understand, because, I think, well, what you guys do, and as far as, full service, you guys do have a number of different levels for people to kind of get in and dip their toe in, if you will, and understand how they can utilize an outside third-party resource like yourself to help them with their homeowner acquisition. What's the best way to do that? I'm sure there's, you guys obviously have the website and stuff, but how should people reach out?
Yeah. So obviously just go to Vintory.com, Vintory.com, or you can email me, Brooke, Brooke at Vintory.com. Really active on LinkedIn. If you go to our website, we have tons and tons and tons of free material. I've got every conference presentation I've ever done is recorded on our website for free. We have tons of information on our blog. I actually wrote a book. It is an Amazon bestseller in all three categories that we submitted in, from 0 to 500 properties in 5 years. Your playbook to grow your short-term vacation rental inventory, so you can get that on Amazon. And it's all proceeds go to charity on that as well. But yeah, just reach out to me. Happy to help out. But yeah, we've got multiple products. So really in kind of a nutshell, what Vintory does is, again, we help short-term vacation rental managers grow their inventory. We're one part data platform, we're one part marketing agency, and we've also built a CRM and marketing automation platform as well that ties it all together. But again, our mission is really to level the playing field and help every single vacation rental manager with their inventory growth needs.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. I appreciate your time today and joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for this week's episode of GuestX. Be sure to sign up for our email list at guestxpodcast.com. That's guest, the letter X, podcast.com, and follow us on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. We are Mr. Guest Experience, Brian Hamaui and Matthew Loney, signing off and reminding you to always create a customer experience worth talking about.
This podcast is a Hospitality.fm production.